Welcome to my channel. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. Last Sunday I resurrected this 1950s Esterbrook J fountain pen, and it's just gorgeous in this root beer caramel reddish brown copper colored celluloid, and you can see this video by clicking right up here. And guess what? I looked around and I found I had another one deep in my to-do storage container of vintage fountain pens. This is an identical fountain pen to the one I just restored. The only difference is this one has no clip, as the clip has broken off. And the nib is in rather sad shape. And it's not even an Easterbrook, it's a Venus. And so eventually I'll restore this one as well. But today's video is about this Parker Vacumatic Debutante from 1943. Here we are. This is a Parker Vacumatic, and it is the debutante size. A short clip. Yeah, there is a diaphragm in there. How good it is, we'll find out. This is a nib that was almost black. You see that nib's in really good shape, and so that'll polish up to pure gold within seconds. But I can't wait to clean this one up. Maybe below here I'll take a photo of the pen when it's restored. It'll magically appear right here. These debutantes are lovely small pens for those of you that have small hands. And you can see that the nib is almost black. It is actually a two-tone gold and silver. The barrel is very transparent, as you can see when I shine it with a light from behind. It has the split arrow blue diamond Parker clip, the wide chevron cap band, and what looks like a very well preserved nib. So I really enjoy these fountain pen restorations of these Parker Vacumatics, because when you purchase these on eBay, nobody likes them because they're all so old and dingy and scratched up. This one hasn't got a lot of scratches on it, a lot of cap wear along here, no severe bite wounds to the blind cap, a nice imprint right there, and the 3 with a single dot, which means it's the third quarter of 1943. The blind cap comes off. We see the celluloid pump rod, what feels like a diaphragm inside there. So I'm going to want to get this section off and get my inspection camera in there to see whether that diaphragm is in there or not. Well, we will go to the workbench now and see if we can bring this fountain pen from 1943 back to life again. And here's the pen out of the ultrasonic bath of Pen Flush, which is 90% distilled water and 10% ammonia. And it indeed has a diaphragm in there. It was sucking up water. The diaphragm works. But let's see if we can get the section off now that it's been sitting for a while, and loosen up some of that old ink. Get a little rubber mat here. There we go. That section's coming off nicely. And there's the breather tube. Lots of old ink in there. And let's see if we can get that breather tube out of there. There we go. Not very long, but it is a debutante, so it's smaller. And we can knock that feed out of there now and get at that nib and look for a date code on it and polish it up. I'm going to take my inspection camera and go inside the barrel and inspect that sack, see what condition it's in. Get some of the old ink off the inside of that barrel, be able to see how nicely clear it is. Beautiful. So this is going to clean up very nicely. But I want to get that feed out of there first. I'm going to put this section and feed back in the ultrasonic bath with some Pen Flush to dissolve more of that ink, and then we'll tap that feed out of there. And the nib unit is out of the Pen Flush ultrasonic bath, and already the nib is starting to clean up, starting to look less dark. So let's put it in our block here and see if we can tap this feed out of here. There we go. And there is the feed, looking very good. And there is the nib. And it's got a 3 with 2 dots. So that's the second quarter of 1943 that the nib was made, and the barrel was engraved in the third quarter of 1943. So I'm going to add a little bit of metal polish to this nib and see whether we can get it a little bit brighter. And then I'll use my Dremel tool buffing wheel to polish that nib up some more. Here's the metal polish I use, Autosol metal polish liquid. And there it's already coming up very nicely. I'm not sure what the mask they used for the silver part was. This is a 14 karat gold nib, and the mask, I think they were laid over with platinum, I think. But we'll see. So that'll go back in the bath for a bit, and then I'll put it on my buffing wheel. So here's the nib all polished up, and there's still some really small scratches and things on there. I could polish those out, but at risk of polishing off that platinum plating of the two-tone. And I don't want to do that. It's looking rather shiny right now. The two-tone is still there, but you can see the golden arrow, the platinum on the sides, and the gold on the tail. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to clean up the feed in the section and polish that section. There's no scratches in it, but it just needs a polish, that ebonite section. And I'll put it back in the pen, and then we'll do a dip test of that nib to see if there's anything I need to do to it. So I put the nib and the feed back in the section again, and I'm going to dip test the nib with some Watermans here. See what we have. 1943 Parker Vacumatic, and it's a debutante. Size. It's very, very wet. It's got a lot of feedback. It's a fine. Just going to double check it with my loop here. It could stand with a little bit of adjustment. Just a tiny amount. And there's a nice amount of flex to this nib. Again, it's not a flex nib, but it does have a nice amount of bounce to it. And of course, it's only railroading because I dipped it and it's run down with ink. But that's very nice. I'm going to need to do some micromesh polishing on it to polish out some of that feedback, but the nib seems to be in perfect shape. So now I'm going to remove the nib from the barrel, and we'll see if we can get that Vacumatic pump out. So we get out the Parker Vacumatic extractor, put the collet on the pump, tighten down the collet, get out some rubber gripper, see if we can get this to budge, and it does, and it's coming out very nicely. Oh no, the collet slipped. Got to be tighter on that. I think that's the collet slipping again. I'm going to add a little heat to that. I think I'm going to soak that a little bit more because those threads are slipping. Well, there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is that I'm pretty sure that this pump has been glued into the barrel. There's a little bit of a celluloid bubble on the inside of that barrel. That's not on the outside. It's not a crack, but it might be an indication that that is glue on the inside of there. I've heated it, and I've heated it to the point where shellac should have released, but it has not, and I'm risking stripping those threads by adding any more heat or pressure. So the good news is that that diaphragm in there is relatively new, so whoever replaced this replaced it recently, and it is a good diaphragm, which is all good, but they should never have glued that pump in there. But that sack should last another decade at least inside there. So I'm going to put the pen back together again and see how much water it will draw up, and then we'll go at polishing the barrel and the cap and the hardware and get this pen writing again. So we'll get our scale. We'll put the pen on the scale with the blind cap, and we get 7.5, which is about 3 grams lighter than a standard size Parker Vacumatic. We'll press tear, and then I'm going to fill this up with some water to see how much capacity we have. And there we go, 1.06 milliliters of ink, which isn't too bad for a very small pen. Now I'll remove that section and feed again, put that aside, drain the water out, and then we'll see about getting that clip off of there to polish it up. Hopefully they haven't glued that on as well. So I left the cap and the clip overnight with some Pensbury Manor Penetrate Potion number 7, PMPPP number 7, and I was able to get that jewel off of the top of that cap. So there's our plastic jewel, there's our short Parker split arrow blue diamond clip, and there's the cap. So I'm going to mask off that gold band with some low tack blue painter's tape and then polish that up. We'll buff this gold clip with a jeweler's polishing cloth and possibly my buffing wheel on my Dremel tool. We'll make sure we don't lose that blue dot of paint enamel, and we polish up that barrel and that cap. Now we're going to work on the clip first. So I'm going to start with some metal polish, which is Autosol metal polish liquid, and get some of the grime off it with a cotton swab. And it's already looking brighter. I'll put it on the buffing wheel. And there's the clip after the buffing wheel with some polishing compound and then the jeweler's polishing cloth. It looks like brand new. Beautiful. I'm going to remove the section, put it away for safekeeping, and then I'm going to go at this barrel with some 400 grit to get rid of some of that scratching. There are a few imperfections and scratches in there. The 400 grit will get rid of that. We'll preserve the imprint, and then we'll go through the micromesh from 1500 grit through to 12,000 grit, and then finish up with some Meguiar's Mirror Glaze number 9 Swirl Remover 2.0. And there we are with the 400 grit. I've avoided the imprint, and I've got several gouges and scrapes out of the surface, and I've got a really nice matte clean finish. So we'll go through the micromesh now, starting with 1500 grit. And there's the barrel, all shined up like new. It's gorgeous. Now let's go after that barrel. First thing is there's a huge scratch right there on this cap, and I need to get rid of with the 400 grit. It shows up even better when you've sanded it a bit with the 400 grit. There, now I erased it. So now we'll go over lightly with the 400 grit the rest of the cap. And there's the cap all polished up. When I got to the 6000 grit, that's when I took the masking tape off of that cap band, and I let the remaining micromesh polish that cap band up as well. And it's looking very nice. And there's that transparent barrel. Looking terrific. So we're going to put the pen back together again. Add a little bit of silicone oil to those threads right there, and just work it back and forth. We don't want that section locked down because we want to be able to get at it for cleaning and maintenance, especially since that filler is now locked down. And I'll take a soft toothbrush to those threads to get some of that polishing compound out of there. And let's position the clip. This is an interesting cap band pattern that I've not seen before. Usually it's chevrons. This seems to be arrows that are pointing at each other, and so there's no cartouche in there to engrave your initials or anything. So I'm going to place the clip between the two breather holes, and it seems to be touching the barrel, so I don't need to bend that clip at all. And we put the jewel back in, and once that jewel's back in, I will polish it with some polishing compound as well, just to get out any scratches that might be there. It doesn't seem to want to go back in, so yeah, there's some old crud inside those threads, so I'm going to go at that with a dental tool to get those threads clear. Yeah, the plastic is a little bit bent right there, so I'm going to try to clear that thread out. Okay, well that took me a little bit of work. I had to clean out the threads. There was some shellac in there that was causing it not to go back in again. So between my dental tool and my X-Acto blade, I cleaned out all that shellac and actually repaired the threads a little bit with my X-Acto blade. Then I pressed it tight with my rubber mat so that the clip was about there, and then put a pencil inside the cap, my rubber mat on the outside, and then pushed it into position to lock it down tight, and it's very tight right now. So there's our pen all back together. All we have to do now is fill it up with some ink, do a writing sample, and tune that nib. Okay, here we are with our beautiful restored 1943 Parker Vacumatic Debutante. I'm going to fill the pen with some Watermans. That filler is working perfectly. And I have to post this pen because it is pretty short, and I expect it to write the same as it did before. 1943 Parker Vacumatic Debutante, and it's very juicy, but it does have a lot of feedback. Those tines are perfectly aligned, so I'm going to start with a little 8000 grit micro mesh and do some figure eights and so forth. I've got a lot of ink, so I'm not going to add any water. I'm just going to go up and down 8 times, the points of the compass 8 times, counterclockwise, clockwise, figure eights, just like that, and see how that does just with the 8000. Yep, that's nicer. Let's go to 12,000 grit and do the same thing. Well, that's very nice. What a beautiful nib. Still a little bit more feedback than I enjoy. Just going to make it a little bit more glassy. There we go, that's better. Much nicer. This is a fine nib, and it's got some nice bounce to that gold nib. It's a two-tone platinum and gold, and it's writing beautifully now. And I'll come back with my thoughts about this resurrection. So what are my thoughts about this resurrection? Well, I thought this was going to be easier than it ended up being, and that's pretty typical for any pen that I've restored. If it looks like, oh, this is going to be a breeze, it ends up throwing you a curve. This ended up being a beautiful, beautiful pen with a lovely nib that writes juicy and smooth, and it's a really interesting size, this Debutante. Let's put some measurements on this. This pen is 118, 119 millimeters long when it's capped, and it's 137.6 millimeters long when it's posted. I just want to bring out a standard size Parker Vacumatic and post it. This is a non-restored standard size Parker Vacumatic from 1940s, and you can see the difference between the Debutante and the standard size. It's not only more slender than the standard, it's much shorter, and the nib is smaller as well. So when you look at them unposted like this, you can see the large size differential between the standard and the Debutante. The biggest issue this pen presented me with was the fact that this Vacumatic pump would not come out. It's glued in there solid. I don't see any way of getting it out short of drilling it out and putting a new one in. Happily, there's a new diaphragm in this pen already, and it works perfectly, so that's going to allow this pen to work for many, many years. My caution would be that if you use this pen for any length of time, that you keep it inked, you don't let it dry out. If you're not going to use it for any length of time, take that section off, syringe out all the old ink, dry it up, and then store it. And that latex diaphragm will last for many years. If you let the ink dry in this pen, that diaphragm is going to disintegrate. So this pen will last for a long time, but it will require some maintenance from whoever owns it. And of course, that means that I'm going to sell this pen. If I'd been able to replace the diaphragm in there and get that pump out, I would have sold this pen for $200 US. But since that pump can't be removed, I'm going to discount it by $25. And so I'm going to sell it for $175 US plus shipping. and shipping to contiguous North America is running a roughly $10 US these days. So if you're interested in purchasing this beautiful little pen, drop me an email at inkquiringminds@gmail.com with your name and your address, and I'll get you a shipping quote, and I'll give you instructions on how to pay my PayPal. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section. You'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to videos like this one the moment I post them. And that just leaves it for me to say, thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote.
I made this.